welcome to For the Love of Nature, a podcast where we tell you everything you need to know about nature and probably more than you wanted to know. I'm Laura.
And I'm Katy, and today we're going to be talking about animals and how they have some incredible adaptations for eating.
And we're back!
Season, 7? Good Lord.
Yes, season 7. So it's been 2 full years. This is the start of the 3rd one.
This is ridiculous.
In the best way.
It is, but it's also, I know we've talked about this before, like, you and I are both very much so hurry up, pick new hobbies.
Hobby jumpers, for sure.
Yeah, hobby jumping.
Yeah.
And here we are, start of year 3, which is ridiculous.
It really is because of the novelty of these episodes.
It is. No,
they're different enough
is.
that it's holding my attention.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, at this point, I normally would be feeling like I have to continue the hobby because I'm not a quitter, but at the same time dreading every time we record. That would be what it was if it was any other hobby.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like the guilt, the internal guilt of, hey, I need to do this. But nothing. Here we are. Start of year 3. This is, again, ridiculous. But we're happy to be here. Ridiculous in a good way, just because we're shocked that we're still doing this.
Yeah. So like Katy said, we're going to start things off lighthearted science. So not too heavy, just talking about some animals and some of their weird adaptations for eating. Because, Katy and I both love animals and we both love food.
I was just talking, I think we talked about this on the podcast before, how my worst food experience was definitely by far eating an earthworm. And I just told that story the other day at work, and I just got blank stares. I mean, nobody was shocked. I mean, but still, everyone was just like, what? I was like, it's like the sack, and it's so disgusting, but.
The sack.
Just don't bite down when you eat earthworms, folks.
Ew.
Lesson learned. So gross. But some of my, at least one of my animals for sure like to eat them. The other one just maybe by mistake, but. Alrighty, did you want to go first, or?
Yeah, sure, Katy, I'll start. So I'm going to start with woodpeckers.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I was like, what animal should I talk about? So, of course, I'm Googling for ideas, and then woodpecker showed up. I'm like, oh, yes, because I talk about actually these at work way more often than most people probably do.
Yeah.
Because we've got so many species of woodpeckers in the woods around work, and we talk about them a lot. So, I learned some new things. I had some of my own. Yeah, oh, for sure. I thought I knew everything about woodpeckers, and so I thought this would be easy.
That's pretty lofty.
Yeah, that's true. But at least I thought I had a pretty good idea about woodpeckers. But turns out everything I knew about them, or almost everything, was a lie. Yeah.
So you've just been telling the masses lies.
Yeah, I didn't know. Everything was debunked last summer. So, people, straight from science's mouth, let me tell you about woodpeckers. So, what is a woodpecker? There are 239 species of woodpeckers in the world, 23 of which live in the United States. And around me, I think there's 5 or 6. So, they are insanely specialized birds. They have a million adaptations. I'm only going to be talking about the ones that help them to eat. And they've got more than one, but just...
More than one that helps them eat?
Yes.
Okay.
So, woodpecker, getting the name for pecking on wood, obs. They're doing this to eat and for territory and some other things. But just to real quick put things in perspective, so they have to be adapted to be able to do this. They peck 100 to 300 times per minute, or up to 20 times per second, which is just crazy. Their head is going towards that tree at 23 feet per second. And when their beak hits that tree, Katy, their head experiences 1,200 Gs.
What?
Which is 14 times more than a human head could.
How good did you fact check yourself here?
Multiple sources.
Man.
Yeah, and they do this 12,000 times per day. On average. I mean, I'm sure that's a guesstimate.
I was going to say, because can you imagine? I mean, I know scientists. Yeah, but only you figure out how fast they go, and then you have to be the scientist that follows them around, and then time each time they you know what I mean, and then just calculate time. Man,
definitely an intern's job.
Totally an intern job.
Definitely an intern. So anyway, what's all that pecking for? Well, A lot of it is for food. So their diet, because this is all about eating. So what are they eating? Well, it kind of depends on the woodpecker, but most are insect and seed eaters. Some drink nectar. So the adaptations that they have to do it. Here are a few. First of all, their beak. So like all birds, you can tell what they eat by the way that their beak looks. So, all of you out there, pelican eats fish because it's got a scooping beak, and you know that a hummingbird can drink nectar because it's got a little tiny pointy beak for getting in flowers. Well, the woodpeckers have chisel-like beaks for being able to peck. But some cool things about them, and that's unique to woodpeckers, is that they can independently move the upper and lower beak. And that is so that when they peck into the tree to get the insects, their beak doesn't get stuck. Which I don't know why I've never thought about that.
I've never thought stuck.
Yeah, like a little dart.
Yeah, right?
So they have like a slow-mo video of this online you can look up, but when they stick their beak in, they twist it open to pull it out. They just get enough wiggle room to be able to pull out.
Insert so many jokes here. Continue.
Yeah. Insert, twist, pull out. So this is a maybe, but I did want to mention this. There's ongoing research on woodpecker beaks. Possibly, the golden-fronted woodpecker has an upper beak that's slightly longer than the lower beak.
Okay.
Which theoretically could divert the force, those G-forces, up and over the head.
What?
And then the beak itself is made of several parts. The outside's keratin, which is like your fingernails, and they're actually made out of little plates like fingernails that overlap a little bit so they could indent a little when they hit. Underneath of that's bone. So although the top beak is longer, the bottom beak's bone inside is longer. So whatever
it has like a recoil. Like the top one has more recoil. Yeah.
Whatever doesn't get deflected over the top then hits the longer bone on the bottom and is diverted down.
How the heck do you test that?
Right. So that's where we're at. It's a pretty recent study, but from the other information that you're going to hear in a second, not sure if it's actually diverting those forces. Yes, it's for sure they had an x-ray. The beak is like that.
Yes,
Why?
yes.
We're not sure. That's what they're guessing, though. But they do have a special head for all that pecking to be able to get the stuff that they're eating. Their head is stiffer, and actually, like the skull itself, the bone is stiffer because it's made out of different minerals than a lot of other birds' skulls, but it's still really thin, so it's, can still fly. And it has less fluid around its little tiny brain.
It has less fluid?
Yeah. So, because they don't want it to slosh. Okay? So the only reason why these tiny little guys aren't getting concussions everywhere they go, mostly is because of the less fluid thing around the brain. Their brain can't go anywhere. Like, our brain, we get
still think that has
sloshes.
Yeah, but you would still think that has to hurt.
Yeah. Okay. So
I mean, regardless.
Here's where I've been lied to my whole life, and where I've been telling all the kids up until this week, is that woodpeckers have shock-absorbing heads.
Well, yeah, because that's what we were all, I think that's whenever we were all, I want to say kids, but that is what we were taught.
I think that's always been the theory.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of adaptations that it has that looks like that's what it would do. But boom, debunked last summer. So this other guy was like, there's no way that happens. If they had a shock-absorbing head, then they would have to be pecking harder and longer because you don't have a shock-absorbing hammer. That would require you to do more work.
Yeah.
And the bird doesn't want to do more work because that's more energy. So he was like, I'm going to make sure that's true, but I don't think that it does. So he took all these videos of captive woodpeckers, and he can't see the brain moving inside, okay? But if it's a shock-absorbing head, then the beak and the brain would be moving at different times.
Yeah.
Because that brain would be delayed.
Yeah.
Can't see the brain, but you can see the eyeball. And the eyeball is directly next to the brain in a woodpecker. So the eyeball then theoretically would be moving slower. In no woodpecker did that happen. So therefore, probably not a shock-absorbing head. They're just taking that full 1,200 Gs.
So maybe they really are just like dumb birds. They're just like, gotta get the worms.
Yeah. So, no fluid around the brain. That helps. But also, he thinks that the main reason why that they're not getting the concussions is the fact that their brains are 700 times smaller than ours. And something that's tiny can be hit much harder than something big. He used the example of a fly hitting a window would absolutely kill us.
Yeah.
But the fly is like, whatever, and keeps flying.
Yeah.
So the woodpecker they did like a computer model, and it would have to be hitting at least twice as hard on wood.
Which is ridiculous that it would it's not hitting 12 G's or whatever. That's not hard enough.
Right, not hard enough. On wood.
Yeah.
The caveat there is if once they start, I have definitely heard them hitting metal, and that is enough to give them a concussion.
Interesting.
They've also found, like, dead woodpeckers that they've done necropsies on, and they've got a lot of proteins in their brains, which happens to humans when we get concussions.
Yep.
So if it's the same with birds, then actually all woodpeckers, they all are.
Yeah.
They're just dealing with it and probably die before it ever becomes a problem.
Interesting.
So it's just a bunch of brain damaged little woodpeckers out there, which is kind of sad, but I just couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Their head's not shock absorbing?
I've been lied to!
They have like a sponge, it looked like a spongy bone, there's all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So, no. So they've got the specialized head, they've got a specialized chisel beak, they have an extremely thick inner eyelid so that their eye doesn't pop out of their head on impact.
I'm just... Get Bill's eye again, like every time.
Gosh dang it. Not again. So they got an extra thick eyelid. They have strong neck muscles to be able to do that.
An extra thick eyelid.
Well, I'm sure because they probably have to, they have to shield the eyeball, but they probably have to keep their eyes open to be able to see. So they have that extra eyelid, like that third one that a lot of animals do. It just happens to be extra. It's like welding goggles. Just to keep the eyeball inside.
Poor woodpeckers.
Yeah. They have really strong neck muscles. And then last but not least is the tongue, which is actually why I did this animal. Because I think the tongue alone is the coolest part of the adaptation for eating. So all of the rest was so that it could peck into the tree to get the food. The tongue is how it's actually getting it. The woodpecker tongues are super long, okay? Like, at work,
it's uncomfortably long compared to their body.
Yeah. Like, Gene Simmons has nothing on a woodpecker. Yeah, right. Okay. At work, I always tell the kids to stick them out as far as they can, and then I'm like, too bad, woodpeckers can do it further. Yeah. And so, just like other animals, their tongue is attached to a hyoid bone. In us, if you pinch your throat, you can kind of feel that hard hyoid bone, like, halfway down your neck. That's what your tongue's attached to. In a woodpecker, that same thing, but that bone is up in their right nostril. Okay? Or right above their right nostril. Then the tongue goes up and over their head, splits into a V around the back of the head, and then joins back once again when it hits the mouth to then go out. Okay? Again, excessive.
Yeah, really?
But again, you would think that this could then cushion the head. That's not what it's doing, though. It's just storage. It just needs extra storage for that insanely long tongue. It has to start somewhere. So rather than coming up and making loops around the throat, it's just like, screw it. We'll start up around the nose, come back around the head, and then just.
But from like an evolution adaptation perspective, like, what the heck? You know what I mean?
I think seems like it would be much more likely for that bone to migrate down than up around the back of the skull to the nose. Okay.
Yeah, that just isn't. Yeah, that seems weird to me.
It had to have slowly moved up. I don't know.
Maybe one sneezed too hard one day, or it just hit its head a little too hard, and it like jostled.
All the jarring.
Yeah, just jostled the wrong way, and that's how it got its tongue up and around its head. Yeah. Just oopsie. Whoops.
Oops. So when their muscles contract, the tongue sticks out. When the muscles relax, the tongue goes back in, and that tongue can be up to a third the length of that little bird's body. With the longest one being at least in North America, is the flicker. It's got a tongue that sticks 2 inches past its beak, which is pretty long for a bird that's not,
Right,
huge.
Yeah.
And all that, why does it even need that tongue, is because of its feeding habits. So remember, I said that it can either eat insects or seeds sometimes, or nectar. So depending on what it's eating, the tongue has a different end, or is a little bit different. So the flicker tongue is very much like an anteater because they specialize in eating ants. So they're long and smooth and extra sticky. So they got the longest one because they need to stick their tongue down those little anthills like a noodle and just slurp it around. And then something like the pileated has barbs on the end of their tongue.
Yeah, that one I knew.
So it's not very long.
Yeah.
It just needs to stick it in a crack of the bark, spear some beetle larvae, and slurp them up. And then this yellow-bellied sapsucker, which doesn't even sound like a real bird, they're drinking nectar. So their tongue actually has like tiny little bristles all along the bottom. So it uses like capillary action and just kind of like sucks up the nectar on their tongue. So the tongue depends on the diet. But it all comes down to the fact that they're eating some really specialized stuff and they are completely adapted to eat that.
My money for the ivory-billed woodpecker, if it is still around, would have to be like
some adaptations for survival, man.
Yeah, right. Like hide and go seek skills. 1, 2, 2. I would assume it would be more like a pileated because 1, everybody mistakes ivory-billed for pileated. For those of you who don't know, ivory-billed woodpeckers may or may not be completely extinct. But very recently, once they finally declared that it was officially extinct, people have been saying that they're spotting them. And it's not just, Joe Schmo out there birding. Because now, as soon as they officially announced that they're extinct, like, birders went nuts. And they're like, no, they are not. And so everybody went out and tried to start looking for it and stuff. And so it is very, very, very similar to a pileated woodpecker, which they are huge birds. Yeah, they're huge birds too. Well, huge birds for a woodpecker. So anyway, my guess would be ivory-billed woodpeckers are in like southeastern, I don't even think they're into Texas quite. Maybe in some of the swamps or used to be. Arkansas, Louisiana, all the way over to Florida. And I think most of the more recent sightings have been Arkansas and then Florida.
Just like remote areas probably.
Yeah, very, very remote areas. Yeah, so my money would be on something more like a pileated.
Yeah, probably they're eating the larvae of the trees.
And hide and go seek. Just...
too many of them got concussions. That's what ended up happening.
Right? Goodness.
So yeah, that's the woodpecker. I love them, and now I'm going to tell kids the right facts.
Now I've been sorry, kids, if you've heard me give this talk before, it's going to be a completely new talk because everything I said was wrong.
The tongue, it's accurate, but the reasons for it, none of it has to do with shock absorbing. It's all a lie.
Laura, liar to children. All right, so the first animal that I'm going to talk about in their unique adaptations, again, this shouldn't be surprising, but I'm going to talk about a platypus.
Yay!
I think we've talked about a platypus before, but I don't remember what it was.
It was me.
It was you.
Fighting, right? It was
okay, yeah. With the spurs and stuff.
Spurs.
Yeah. All right, so we've already...
venom. That's what
it was, the venom one. Yeah. All right, so the platypus is a strange animal, morphologically speaking, of course. It's... I think I was reading a story like when they first found it, and they described it as like they really didn't know, and so they caught one. They sent it back to England to be like, what the heck is this? Because they didn't know what
is it a bird? Is it a mammal?
I don't know.
Is it a fish?
Yeah, don't know what this is. So they're only found in Eastern Australia, and they are a semi-aquatic mammal that is known for its duck-like bill, which is what we're gonna dive into later. Get it? Yeah. Their webbed feet, and the fact that it is only one of the 2 only mammals in the world that lay eggs. When they do lay eggs, it's generally between 1 to 3 eggs. So in terms of size, the adult platypus can grow up to about 20 inches in length and weigh about 4.5 pounds. Their webbed feet can help them be quick swimming, and they can go as fast, upwards of 1 meter per second at a top speed, which is about 2.2 miles an hour.
That's pretty good.
Well, if you get close enough to where one, the best thing you could do is like briskly walk away. Yeah. Because 2.2 miles an hour for us is not that fast. For them, I'm sure that it's like a squirrel. They think they're going really fast.
I don't know why I always think about platypuses as being otter-sized, and they're not.
No, they're
so much smaller.
They're small. They are very small. Again, I'm not bragging or anything, but I have seen one in the wild. And I was the only one of the class to see it besides the professor who was like, hey, look, platypus. And I had already happened to be looking out the window. Yeah. Right at the same. So I got super, super lucky. Anyway, for the most part, they are found in freshwater streams, creeks, and rivers, as well as in swamps, lakes, lagoons, where they spend most of their time in the water hunting for food. They will occasionally venture into brackish water, but it is very rare. So one of the most fascinating and little-known facts about the platypus is its ability to detect electric fields. It has sensitive receptors in its bill, so it's not, bill's just not because it got confused and wanted to be a duck. It allows it to locate and capture its prey even in complete darkness. One, they're nocturnal. They're mainly nocturnal, so that's one. Yeah. But not only this, but platypus, when they go into the water, they close their eyes, nose, and ears when they swim.
That seems ridiculous. Why would they not have the nictitating membrane thing?
Because that's what they choose to do. And so, I mean, which is kind of like how my sister swims, because that's how she always was as a kid. She, like, closes her nose, like, eyes. Nose. Yeah, weirdos.
I'm just a platypus. Don't judge me.
I mean, to be fair, evolution speaking, if a platypus is going to do that, it would have to have some sort of adaptation.
Well, right. It's just wandering around a little blind guy in the water, right? Just hoping to find fish.
Yeah. So,
whatever it's eating.
But to be fair, if you're going to be hunting in the water at night, everything's black anyway. So I guess you might as well.
What's the point?
Yeah, close your eyes and hope your other senses kick in, I guess. But they mostly hunt small aquatic animals such as crustaceans and fish, which do generate a weak electric fields as they move through the water. So how do they actually do this? So this unique adaptation allows a platypus to locate its prey with incredible accuracy, even in the murkiest pitch black waters. Does not matter. Again, they have their eyes closed, so none of it.
Like a shark, right? Don't shark have this ability with the electric?
Yeah, to some extent. Yeah. Okay. No, they definitely do, but not. I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's the same setup.
Okay,
I'll have to look. But scientists believe that the platypus is able to detect electric fields as weak as 5 microvolts, which is about 1 million times weaker than the electric fields that we can detect with our fingers.
Wait, sorry, say that number one more time for me.
5 microvolts, which is about 1 million times weaker than an electric, than what we could feel a hum, like a hum.
Gosh.
Yeah. So how does it do it? The bill, which is a supersensory organ, is made up of 3 distinctly different receptor cells that help the platypus detect movements and subtle electric fields produced by its prey. It has 60,000 pushrod mechanoreceptors on the bill that detect changes in pressure and motion, while an additional 40,000 of 2 different types of electroreceptors track the electrical signals produced by the muscular contractions of small prey. In comparison, a human adult has anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 taste buds on our tongue. And so they have over 100,000 on their tiny little bills of receptors.
You know, already how sensitive, like, our fingers are, like, the most sensitive part of our entire body. Okay?
Yeah.
And already, it's 1 million times stronger than the most sensitive part of our body.
Yeah.
And then, do you think that if their bills are that sensitive, with not just electric mechanoreceptors being any touch at all, like, how is it not painful for them to just exist? If they bump their beak at all, are they just, like, if they just
not necessarily, though, because, I mean, you figure, like, with, like, our tongue, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to say it's desensitized, but it's used to taking a certain amount of stimuli all the time anyway. You know what I mean? Like, it's used to it. And so I think to some extent, it just got used to it. So the platypus, as they're hunting, they will use, like, kind of like a side-to-side motion of its head, and it gauges the direction and distance of its next meal by combining the flows of the sensory information. So as it's going, it's moving its head side to side, it's collecting all this information.
It's just making a little map in its head.
Basically. And it goes side to side, left to right, because the receptors on the platypus's bill are striped from front to back. So they're all lined up in a row. And it's one line of electroreceptors, one line of mechanoreceptors, one line of electro, one line of mechanical.
Whoa.
And so they alternate. And so it's like their receptors lines are perpendicular to the way it's moving its head.
So it's getting its insane precision feedback.
Yes. So because it's crossing, they're making crosshairs every time they're feeding it.
That's crazy.
And what's also cool is this stripe pattern, this back and forth stripe pattern is also matches what's like a semi-stripe pattern in their brain as well of like receptors. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it all just literally lines up. Boom.
Gosh.
Yep. And so these findings all came from a researcher fairly recently called, his name is Jack Pettigrew. He's an Australian neuroscientist who I believe passed away in 2019. But he proposed that the sensory cortex, there are neurons that sit. Now, this is talking about the brain. There are neurons that sit on the border of the stripes in the. Wait, hold on. Yeah, in their brain. So talking about the brain. He said that the neurons don't respond to any particular form of sensory information, but rather they are connected to both the electrical receptor and the mechanoreceptor neighbors, which is what he called the bimodal neurons. So some bimodal neurons get excited when the electrical and mechanical inputs are close together in time. Some get excited when the inputs are far apart in time. And they exist this way on a spectrum. So let me put that into me terms, because I had to read that like 4 times when I first was reading it. So what does it mean? All right, so say a fish is relatively far away from a platypus. The electric current that fish is giving off from as it's moving is from the muscles of its flapping fins, which can travel at a faster frequency than the mechanical disruption of the water. So the time between the 2 inputs that the platypus is getting would be a longer one if it's farther away. As the fish swims closer, the signals would obviously get closer and closer together in time. And so, does that make sense? Like as it's...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if Pettigrew's bimodal neurons do exist within the platypus's hand, which he has very strong evidence that it does, the platypus would be able to judge then the distance of its prey based on the time differences between the 2 signals. And so it's able to estimate how far away it is because of like the length of time. Like they're smart enough to be like, oh, I can tell how far away it is because of how quick those sensors are coming in.
What's so interesting is that this is, from my understanding, I was watching a YouTube video once from this really awesome guy, and he was showing how eyes work. And our eyes work very similar in the fact that there are levels where neurons are firing off, and like combinations make this neuron fire, and combinations make this neuron. So we are doing that with our eyes. Since they're not using their eyes, they're doing the exact same mechanics,
but with their
in place of eyes.
Yes. Good, they don't need them anyway because they're in pitch black water at night.
It's just really cool that it's like they're literally seeing it's the
bill.
Same pathway.
Yeah, it's the same pathway. And there are, like you were just saying about humans, and there are different sensory systems across several different species that would exhibit this sort of same system, but it just happens to be that platypus are incredibly accurate for how tiny they are.
Yeah.
So besides that, in addition to hunting, the platypus also uses its ability to detect electric fields for other activities such as communication and navigation. For example, platypuses use their electric sense to communicate with each other and detect the presence of other platypuses in the area. So based upon the size, like it can tell size, it can tell distance and all that stuff, and I guess it just, again, kind of like a bat, can pick up on the size, location, how far away it is, and things like that, and kind of make a mental picture of what it is that's coming closest to it.
If they're a predator, why don't they have teeth? Is I guess because they need space for those neurons, so it's a beak.
I mean, you figure though that where they live, there's much bigger animals, and so the niche that they're filling, they wouldn't. If they did have teeth, if they were a bigger carnivore. Or if they needed to be a carnivore, they'd probably be a little bit bigger over time. And there's already all those niches that are filled in Australia. And so they do fill a very particular niche. And I don't want to say they dominate it, but I mean...
Yeah, it's either that or maybe, they just need the surface area. Like, they couldn't do the same thing with teeth. They need the beak for the surface area for the neurons. They wouldn't be as efficient hunters.
And I mean, why waste your energy time building teeth, adapting teeth. You know what I mean? If it's eating, it's getting what it needs. You know what I mean? It's going to put all that into the sensory system. So anyway, so the platypus is really a crazy and unique animal. I mean, besides everything else that makes it interesting and unique, the whole bill thing is just crazy. So yeah. So that's the platypus. Yeah.
Okay, my last one. Also, feel like I've heard of this animal but know nothing about it. They're, again, another animal that has some really cool adaptations that I'm not going to cover today. We should probably cover in a future episode. I'm just going to do their eating ones. And it's the hagfish. There are 76 species of them. They all live in cold water. Oh. They look like eels.
Why that many?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. They look like eels, but they're not. They're a species of jawless fish, which is, they're cousins of lampreys. So,
another disgusting animal.
They have a skull, but no vertebra. So they're not true vertebrates. They're like an in-between animal. They don't really count as they're like a proto-vertebrate or something like that. They have no true eyes. They're up to 1 meter long. And they just look gross, dude. If you look up at a picture,
no, they really do.
They have loose, scaleless skin, okay? They look pretty phallic. And they're pink to blue-gray in color, just fleshy. It's nasty.
It is. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, they're one of the worst animals.
So, what do they eat? Because, again, their diet always, adaptations are made for that diet. So they eat some fish and crustaceans and worms. So they're a little bit carnivorous. But mostly they're opportunistic scavengers. Meaning dead stuff. Manna from heaven that falls to the ocean.
Exactly. That's what I say. When you're that gross looking, you just take what you can get.
They can eat several times their own weight. Jealous. Ugh. And things don't have to be dead for them to start on. Which is awful.
I remember that, because aren't lampreys the same way?
I think lampreys, though, are like almost more parasitic.
Okay,
so I think the difference, so the lampreys, I'm pretty sure, latch on like a parasite and feed from the outside.
Which is so disgusting.
Hagfish are worse, okay?
Oh, because no.
Listen to this quote. First of all, God bless the scientist that said this. This is from Science Magazine, people. Quote, when they come across a dead fish, they snuggle their sinewy bodies into its cavities and stay there, writhing blissfully. End of quote. Because they eat things from the inside out.
That's so disgusting.
So they're not just holding on to the outside. They burrow in and eat it all. And they're snuggling their... the whole thing, it's too good. So how are they adapted to do this? First of all, they're nightmare tongues.
Ugh.
Again, listeners, you're just going to have to Google a picture because I'm never going to be able to paint this picture as horrifically as it is.
It is, yeah.
They have like a rasping tongue, actually kind of like mollusks, like snails and slugs, a little bit different. So they have 2 tooth-like rasps on top of their, basically a tongue. They like evert their mouth. Whatever turning inside out is, bleh, it out, and on it are like 2 lines of basically teeth that they lick and like fast and hard enough to tear flesh off.
So first you have the woodpecker with the excellent long tongue.
I'm so sorry, everyone. I don't know what it is with me and tongue. I'm just fascinated.
The killer tongues over here now.
Yeah. When they pull back on the tongue, it gets so much worse because it's not that they're just licking off the flesh. When they pull it back in, it pinches together, and that's what rips and tears.
Oh, that's so gross.
Yeah. And to get extra leverage, because they're in the water, and it's not like they can hold on to anything, they hold on to themselves because they tie themselves in knots to give themselves an extra purchase to rip faster. So...
They're doing such a fantastic job of licking. They need to hold. They need to hold on.
Enthusiastic about it.
They need to hold on. Brace yourselves.
They lick a hole into the cavity of the living or dead creature that they're getting inside of.
It's got to be like a partially dead creature. You know what I mean? It can't. It's not completely
No creature's
alive.
putting up with this. Yeah.
The intense licking.
It's not consensual by any means.
Not at all. God, so gross.
So then, now we get to the skin. Okay. So their loose skin that I mentioned before helps them to wriggle into spaces less than half their width. Okay. So they can wriggle on in there. And they
just keep getting grosser.
Because they've got so much essentially wiggle room in their skin. The blood under the skin, so they've got like basically a fluid-filled pouch around their muscles. You know, it's like substance and then just blood and then skin.
That's so gross.
When they wedge themselves in a hole, the blood all gets squeezed like a toothpaste tube to the end of their tails. So scientists said that when you see them, sometimes their tails will be really engorged as they're squeezing through. But it doesn't pop. I don't know why. I guess it just redistributes. But
well, yeah, because I guess it's almost like one of those things. Like it'll all pull to the back, and then as it goes inside, it like whoop, all the blood then goes.
Tubes that you shake.
Yeah, the squeezy tubes things. Yeah,
yeah. The skin also it's loose for other reasons, like avoiding predators and stuff, but that's how it helps it to eat it, by getting inside of the stuff it's eating.
Gotta be slick if you're gonna go that deep inside something.
Literally. Because it is very slick and slippery. It's actually, the thing I'm not going to talk about today, but I want to so badly, is its mucus that it can produce. Another day, guys. Their skin is also nutrient absorbing, which is very useful. So once they're inside, so the reason they're going inside is because they've got no defense. They have very little defenses. So they're just going to hang out inside the corpse to protect themselves from stuff that else is coming to eat it. So they hang out in there. Once they've eaten more than their body weight, there's still stuff left. So they're not going to waste it. So their skin just lets nutrients through. So when they can't eat anymore, they just absorb it. The salt concentration of their tissues is the same as the surrounding water, so dissolved nutrients can flow through the skin. But it's very selective. It will only let nutrients in. It's not letting anything. Like, they've done some tests with radioactive substances, and they can see that, like, the skin is like, you can come through, not you. Like, bouncer
interesting.
Skin. And then lastly, these guys, because they are opportunistic scavengers, and there actually isn't as much stuff falling to the ocean floor as one would think. They're able to go months without eating.
That's what I was going to say.
Carcasses are so rare.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I did know that I knew that because they would have to gorge so much. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be a time frame of just like, I don't need to eat now.
It's feast or famine, baby.
Yeah.
Ugh. And so if you need a little nightmare fuel, listener, just Google hagfish feeding, and that'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll give you the nightmares.
Or a lamprey mouth. Or a lamprey mouth. Yeah. Just,
I mean, they're pretty disgusting, but in a really like train wreck way. Like, you just gotta look at them and learn more about them.
Ugh.
It's pretty cool.
No thanks. I'm glad you did that one.
That's the hagfish.
Gross. All right. Well, my second one you actually already briefly mentioned in your first one. I'm going to do the pelican.
Oh, what are the chances?
Right? Well, I mean, it's a good
it's
bird.
Us, though, too.
And to be fair, like, your default is always going to be big cats or bears. My default always seems to be birds or anything from Australia. So, I mean, bound to happen here. All right, so pelicans, they are large water birds that are found in warm and tropical regions all over the world. There are 8 different species of pelicans. They are known for their large bill, of course, and the distinctive throat pouch, which is used for catching prey. But before we get into the details of, like, their hunting and everything like that, I do want to give a shout out to a pelican's epic feather dew, like their hairdo. If you've never seen a pelican, it almost looks like they have, like, hair feathers. Just look up like pelican hairdos, because some pelicans have some epic hairdos or feather dews. So pelicans, they're quite large. And if you've ever seen like a group of pelicans flying, because they're not like an albatross is huge, but they're like wings are huge. But like pelicans are just like big birds.
They look like tiny planes flying.
No, they do. They are pretty dang big. Their wingspan can reach up to about 9 feet, making them one of the largest flying birds in the world. Yep. They breed in colonies, and the male pelican will build a nest out of sticks and debris and then present the nest to the female. Like, here you go. I mean, which makes sense, because have a nice place for your woman. I get it. After mating, the female will lay 1 to 3 eggs, and both parents will take turns incubating the eggs and caring for the chicks. And that's that. All right, so let's go back to their throat pouch.
Yeah, I feel like there's like videos all over the internet of pelicans just trying to eat everything.
Of everything, yeah. Which is, I mean, if you haven't seen pelicans eat stuff, just YouTube. It's just, like Laura said, just all kinds of weird things that, again, it's a bird. They're not...
If it fits, I'll eat it.
Yeah, they're not... Birds just aren't always the most intelligent creatures out there. So they're found in many different habitats, including mostly the times you'll see them in coastal areas, large freshwater lakes, and sometimes rivers. They are also found in many different countries, including the U.S., Mexico, South America, Africa, and Australia. Now, I will say one disclaimer. I came across several sources out there that claim that pelicans cannot be found in South America, which is completely false because there's an entire species called the Peruvian pelican. So,
yeah, what?
But I'm talking like several sources that said that they can't be found in South America. So weird. But so if you're traveling to any one of those areas, they're not found in anywhere really cold. They typically will stay in the tropic area and then just a little bit further north. You'll be able to see pelicans if you're coastal areas for the most part, or the Great Lakes, so like the larger lakes.
Yeah.
All right, so the hunting techniques and their adaptation they have developed for the eating is their most distinct characteristic, and that's that throat pouch, aka the gular pouch, which they use to catch fish. Now, there are several birds which have that gular pouch, and they have adapted that skin pouch for whatever they need. Some blow it up like a balloon, some use it to look beautiful to attract a mate, some use it to hold food for babies, just transporting it back to the nest, and some even use it as like an air conditioner. Okay, so a pelican, most of the time, out of all those ones that I listed, they'll mostly use it to catch fish, and then a few of the species will actively use it to attract mates. There's one, I believe it was in California, that drastically changes the color of its skin from yellow to red. So it's like a complete change depending on breeding season or a non-breeding season. The pouch is located under their bill and can expand to hold up to 3 gallons of water. Now, in size comparison, that would be like us carrying around a gallon of milk in our mouth. so which is
don't try it, people.
Don't try it, but that is a lot. When a pelican spots a fish, it'll dive into the water, open up its bottom bill, scoop up the fish and the water, and then the water drains out through the sides of the bill to tilt its head down a little bit. Spits out it doesn't spit, it just lets it drain all out, contracts it. It just kind of drooling.
I've done it. I've definitely seen kids do that before. You just
right, yeah,
straight it through your teeth,
right, and that's basically what a pelican does. It drains the water out through the sides of the bill, leaving.
Laura was doing it just today with grapes.
See, exactly. All they have left in there is the fish that are trapped in the pouch, and that's it. And they just eat it. So it's kind of like reverse Jenga.
It's they've just been screw precision, man. I just gotta get the generic area of water
close enough.
And I have the fish too.
Close enough, yeah. Every
fish are trying to be right on the money, and pelicans are
whatever. Yeah, close enough. So every pelican will hunt and use that pouch differently. Unlike the brown pelican will dive into the water or dive most of the way into the water and scoop, while others...
Can you imagine the resistance? Water's friggin' heavy.
No, it is 3 gallons worth of it. Yeah,
that's
again,
pounds a gallon, 24 pounds.
I mean, again, that would be like us carrying around. I mean, imagine having that our cheeks could expand to hold a gallon of water.
But just the force, even of dragging your closed hand through the water, much less
carrying it. Yeah,
like
a bag.
A bag.
An IKEA bag, because that's pretty big. You know what I mean? The IKEA, shopping bags?
Yeah.
That's essentially
just
what it is.
Diving it, just scoop water as fast as you can with one of those. That would be so heavy.
It would be heavy. Yeah. So, brown pelicans, they mostly dive and scoop, while other ones, like the American white pelican, they will just kind of, float and then just scoop. So there's
seems more efficient.
Yeah. And so there's I guess brown pelicans are let's do this and just head dive straight in.
Junkies of pelicans.
And American white pelicans are you know what? Let's just take the calmer route. Let's just kind of float. They'll eventually come to me. We're good. Now, while the pelicans, they have the pouch adaptation for catching, it would be a useless tool if it can't do the job. I can see,
yeah,
but
if you get a hole in it? I guess it depends on how substantial of a hole.
Yeah, I mean, this is...
It's like a leaky balloon. Just a tiny little...
So, if they had just that scoop, but they couldn't catch the fish, it'd be pretty useless, right? So, pelicans, they are known for their cooperative hunting techniques where a group of pelicans will work together to herd the fish into a tight fish ball, kind of like what dolphins or other things do. And then they take turns going down and scooping up. And so they herd all the fish together, chase, whether they go under the water and kind of scare them into a ball, kind of herd them into a ball, and then they take turns scooping. So they'll get enough. So anyway, that's the pelican. Alrighty, guys. Well, that is all about the animals and the insane adaptations that they have gained from eating. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter and support us on Patreon.
And join us next week. New season. We've got plenty more exciting stuff to do. Now that you know more than you wanted to know, your curiosity should be piqued, and hopefully you care just a little bit more. Talk to y'all next week.
Bye.